My name is Harper Williams. I'm 22 years old, and this is how I took the bus to my Harvard graduation while my parents bought my sister a Bentley. Yeah, a Bentley for finishing high school. I wish I was kidding. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Because this story, it's not just about being the forgotten child. It's about what happens when the one they ignored builds something they can't ignore anymore. I was standing in the middle of Harvard Yard the day my parents called. The breeze was light. Crimson banners flapped above the stage they were building for the ceremony. I had just left a meeting at the Innovation Center my company, Secure Pay, was preparing for beta launch, and our valuation had just crossed the billion mark. But they didn't know any of that. To them, I was still the responsible one, the girl who always figured it out, the one who didn't need help. So when I asked if they were coming to my graduation, my dad didn't hesitate. "We can't drive you to the ceremony. Take the bus. We're buying your sister a Bentley." The words hit me like I'd been shoved in the chest. My grip tightened around my phone. I couldn't even speak. "She's worked really hard," he added. "Got into UCLA. We want to reward that." I blinked at the sidewalk, heart hammering. Cassandra, my little sister, was 18, blonde, bubbly, average grades, legacy admission, and she was getting a six-figure luxury car. Me, I just completed a double major with a 4.0 GPA, built a tech company from scratch, funded it with prize money, seed rounds, and sleepless nights. And I was still expected to figure out how to get to my own graduation, by bus. That call ended with my mother chiming in. "You've always been so self-sufficient, Harper. We never have to worry about you." They meant it as a compliment, but it felt like a punishment. The next morning, I stood at the mirror in our apartment, mine and Jessica's, my best friend and now COO, staring at my reflection. My graduation robe was still folded in its plastic cover. My skin looked tired, my eyes darker than usual. I reached into my drawer and pulled out something I hadn't touched in a while. My old Dell laptop. The casing was scratched. 2 of the keys stuck, but it still worked. It had been with me since freshman year, the same machine I used to code the earliest version of Secure Pay. This laptop had been my safety net when I didn't have one, my anchor when my world felt too indifferent. I set it gently on the desk. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I just needed to see proof that I had built something real, something that no one could dismiss or minimize, something that had value, even when I didn't. People think Harvard kids are all rich. And yeah, a lot of them are. They roll up with monogrammed luggage and family endowments. Their parents fly in for move-in weekend. They cry and hug and take photos in front of the dorms. I showed up freshman year with 2 suitcases I dragged from the Greyhound station. My dad had offered to drive me. I said no. I didn't want to owe them anything. I worked 3 jobs that first semester: mornings at the library, afternoons at a print shop, evenings tutoring local high schoolers. I ate instant noodles, hunted for free events with snacks, and learned how to live on 5 hours of sleep. That's also when I met Jessica. She came from Tucson, raised by a single mom who worked nights. She understood what it meant to chase a dream with no safety net. We split textbooks, took turns cooking, watched each other fall apart and rebuild. She was the first person who ever called what my parents did by its name. "That's not tough love, Harper," she said one night, watching me wipe down a counter after my shift. "It's emotional neglect. You didn't deserve that." I didn't say anything, but something cracked inside me that night, a wall I didn't even know I had. Back to now. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone still in my hand, reading my father's last message again. "Take the bus. We're buying your sister a Bentley." Outside, the city buzzed with finals week energy, but inside, everything went still. And then I started laughing. Not because it was funny, because I had finally reached the limit of how much I could swallow. That laugh turned into something colder. Not rage, not despair, but a deep, calm clarity. They would not be there. They never had been. So I would go to my graduation on my own, like always. But this time, I wouldn't just walk across a stage. I'd let the whole world know who they'd underestimated. The next day, I mailed them formal invitations, not just to the ceremony, but to the post-graduation reception my team was hosting. I included a handwritten note. It would mean a lot to have you there. Harper. I didn't expect a reply, but I wanted it on record. I gave them the chance. Let the next move be theirs. That night, Jessica found me in the kitchen staring into a cup of tea I hadn't touched. Still nothing. I shook my head. She pulled out 2 bowls of frozen mac and cheese, tossed one in the microwave. You sure you want to go through with this? The invitations. No. Taking the bus. Going alone. Letting them not show up. They already didn't show up. I said quietly. 10 years ago, 15. At every ceremony, every night I needed them. This is just them being consistent. She slid the steaming bowl across the counter. Then let's be consistent too. You keep rising, and I'll keep clapping the loudest. 3 days later, I picked up my cap and gown from the registrar's office. The staff congratulated me, not knowing I was about to be announced as the youngest self-made female billionaire in the country. I hadn't told anyone at Harvard, not even most of my professors. I didn't want to be treated differently. But the secret wouldn't last much longer. Dean Harrison had called me in that morning. Forbes had gone live with their piece. Secure Pay was on the cover. My name, my face. And my parents, they still hadn't replied. I walked out of his office to the courtyard, phone buzzing in my pocket with interview requests. And that's when it rang. Dad? My hand went cold. My heart didn't race. It sank. I picked up. Harper, he said, we received your invitation. I waited. We have a scheduling conflict. Cassandra's high school graduation is that same weekend. I stayed silent. We're taking her to New York, a shopping trip, for her gift. The Bentley will be delivered Friday. Your ceremony Saturday. The timing's tight. Tight. I almost laughed again. You're not coming. We're proud of you. You've always handled things so well. I'm sure you'll be fine. Right. You'll take the bus, like you always do. Yeah, I whispered, like I always do. I hung up. And this time, I didn't cry. I pulled out my old laptop that night and set it in my graduation bag, right beside my robe. If they were going to make me ride the bus, then I'd ride it like a queen. And when I stood on that stage, they would finally see me. But not before the whole room did first. You want to know the truth? The Bentley wasn't the first slap in the face. It was just the loudest one. Growing up in Connecticut, our house looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine brick exterior. Perfectly trimmed hedges. A marble-floored foyer that echoed when you walked in. Everything about it whispered wealth, order, status. But if you stepped into that house as a child, craving warmth or praise, you'd leave empty. My father, Robert Williams, was the CFO of a Fortune 500 company, the kind of man who believed feelings were a distraction and success was just the baseline. My mother, Elizabeth, was a neurologist, sharp, elegant, always immaculately put together. She rarely raised her voice, but could freeze a room with a single look. Together, they raised their daughters like CEOs in training. Except only one of us was ever taken seriously. When I was 4, Cassandra was born. I still remember the day they brought her home, a bundle of golden hair and big blue eyes. I stood on the staircase, clutching a stuffed fox I'd named Oliver, watching everyone coo over her like she was royalty. And from that moment on, the throne was hers. At 8, I asked for a telescope for my birthday. I wanted to see Saturn's rings. I got a set of educational books instead. Better for developing discipline, my dad said. 2 months later, Cassandra turned 4. My parents hired a party planner, a balloon artist, and I'm not kidding, a real pony. The entire backyard turned into a mini fairy tale kingdom. Everyone smiled at her like she was magic. I told myself, she's just younger. She needs more attention. I'm the older one. I'm supposed to understand. But as the years passed, the gap didn't shrink. It grew into a canyon. Vacations always tailored to Cassandra. She wanted Disney. We went to Disney every time. When I asked, at 12, if we could try something different like science camp, I still remember my mother's gentle pat on the head. Maybe next year, Harper. Next year never came. Even school became a battleground of silence. I brought home straight A's, won spelling bees, got selected for advanced math. My father would glance over my report card like it was a grocery receipt. That's what we expect from you. No smile, no hug, just a nod of approval, like I was completing a task on an executive checklist. Meanwhile, Cassandra brought home a C+ in English and got, "You tried your best. Sweetie, let's celebrate your improvement." I was 15 when I started to realize in our house, effort from me was invisible. Effort from her was exalted. By the time I hit high school, I was running on fumes and perfectionism. Editor of the school newspaper, debate team captain, 4 AP classes, midnight study sessions fueled by black coffee and spreadsheets of my own future. Every move I made was a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment they looked at me with pride. It never was. Not when I won the state debate championship, not when I was named National Merit Scholar, not even when I got into Harvard on merit, with only a partial scholarship. All I got was, "You've always been driven, Harper." That was it. Driven, like I was some kind of machine. And still, I tried to hold on. To find little moments to prove I was still their daughter. Senior year of high school, I was named valedictorian. The ceremony was on a Tuesday evening in May. I told them 2 months in advance. Reminded them a week before. The day before, I mentioned it again over dinner. My mother blinked, surprised. "Oh no, that's the same night as Cassandra's piano recital. She's been practicing for months." I nodded automatically, the muscles in my face frozen into something that looked like understanding. Inside, I broke, silently. That night, I stood at the podium alone, wearing a dress I'd bought with babysitting money, scanning rows of folding chairs filled with other people's family. I still remember a boy 2 rows from the front hugging his mom and dad afterward while holding his award. I walked myself home. My parents got Cassandra takeout and told her she played beautifully. That was the moment I started planning my escape. When the Harvard acceptance came, they said they'd help with expenses, but I never asked. Instead, I worked that summer like a machine. Morning shift at a cafe, afternoons in an office downtown, evenings tutoring math to kids whose parents actually sat through their events. Every dollar went into a locked metal box under my bed. I never opened it unless I was adding more. By August, I had enough for 1 semester barely. I remember the day I left. My parents were surprised when I declined the ride to Cambridge. "I've got it covered," I said, wheeling 2 suitcases down the driveway. "Do you have enough money?" my mother asked, frowning. "I've been saving." "Don't waste it on frivolous things," my father muttered behind his newspaper. They didn't ask what I was majoring in. They didn't ask where I'd live. They didn't even step outside the door. Just a casual, "Good luck." Meanwhile, Cassandra was starting high school that year with a new MacBook Pro and an entire designer wardrobe. The bus ride to Cambridge took 7 hours. The windows fogged up halfway through, and my hands went numb holding my laptop bag. But sitting alone in that seat, something strange happened. For the first time, no one was watching me. No one to compare me, no one to overlook me. Just me, my old laptop, and the long road ahead. That first year at Harvard was brutal. I lived in a single-room dorm with peeling paint and a heater that wheezed all winter. I ate cup noodles 5 nights a week. I once stretched a jar of peanut butter for 6 days. My scholarship covered tuition, but books, housing, food, all on me. And every night, after my shifts at the library or delivering food, I sat at my desk, opened that old laptop, and whispered to myself, "One day, you'll build something that no one can ignore." And I did. But before that, I had to break and then rebuild, brick by brick, on my own. Because the next person who tried to minimize me was someone I thought would be different. Someone who looked at me like I mattered. At least, I thought he did. Jake Thornton walked into my life wearing a charcoal peacoat and carrying a reusable coffee cup with his initials monogrammed on the side. He sat 2 rows in front of me in Intro to Behavioral Economics. His questions were sharp, his confidence effortless. He smelled like expensive cologne and old money. I wasn't impressed. Not at first. It took exactly 1 group project and 1 after-class walk in the snow for me to start letting my guard down. Jake was different, or so I thought. He never bragged about his family's wealth. He never made me feel small. And in a school where everyone seemed to come from a private school pipeline, he actually listened when I spoke. When he found out I worked 3 jobs, he didn't flinch. He offered to help. I said no. When he offered again, and again, and again, I still said no. "You're allowed to let someone take care of you. Harper," he told me one night as we sat curled up in his dorm room, a fire crackling in the common lounge behind us. "I have been taking care of myself since I was 14, I said, softly. "I don't know how to do anything else." He kissed my forehead and said, "Well, maybe it's time you learned." I wanted to believe that, but life had trained me to see generosity as a setup, and I didn't know how to accept help without feeling like I'd owe someone for it. We dated for 8 months, and for a while, I let myself relax, let myself pretend I could live in his world without tension. He took me to dinner at places that served entrees I couldn't pronounce, gave me books just because, bought me noise-canceling headphones when I told him I couldn't focus in the library. I always tried to pay my half. Sometimes I'd Venmo him later. Other times, I'd sneak cash into his coat pocket. But the imbalance never truly disappeared. Because I was still hiding. I never told him about the way I counted every dollar, or how I skipped meals during midterms just to afford books, or how, behind my straight-A armor, I carried years of wounds from being invisible. It all came to a head during spring break. Jake booked us 2 tickets to Paris, first class. He didn't ask. He surprised me. I still remember the look on his face when I told him I couldn't go. I picked up extra shifts over break. I said, "I need the money." "Cancel them." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because rent is due, and utilities, and the secure pay prototype needs testing." He stared at me like I was speaking a different language. "You don't have to do everything yourself, Harper. That's easy to say when your dad pays your credit card bills." He flinched. "You don't think I work hard?" "I think you don't have to." The silence that fell between us wasn't about the trip. It was about the truth neither of us had said out loud. That he couldn't understand what it meant to fight for every inch, to bleed for validation that never came. That I couldn't keep pretending his world didn't feel like a museum beautiful, but not mine. We broke up that night, and I didn't cry, because I couldn't afford to. After Jake, I threw myself deeper into work. Secure pay was still just an idea scribbled on napkins and notebooks, but I had a vision and something more powerful than love, purpose. That's when Professor Wilson entered the picture. She taught a financial technology elective for upperclassmen. I took the class half out of curiosity, half because I heard she was the only professor who actually read every paper. One week, I turned in an analysis on decentralized payment models. I poured every ounce of energy into that paper, pulled 3 all-nighters, built basic code simulations in Python to support my thesis. She asked me to stay after class. I thought I'd done something wrong. Instead, she held up my paper like it was gold. "This," she said, tapping the corner, "is not undergraduate work. This is grad school level thinking." I blinked. "Have you considered fintech as your career path?" "I've considered surviving graduation." She smiled, not the condescending kind, the kind that said, "I see you. You have a mind for systems, for gaps in design. Don't waste that." It was the first time someone with power had ever told me I was more than just a hard worker. She didn't ask about my resume or my last name. She saw me. And for the first time in years, I started to believe I might be capable of building something no one could ignore. Professor Wilson became my mentor. She connected me to alumni in the crypto space, gave me feedback on wireframes, handed me books with notes scribbled in the margins. Under her guidance, Secure Pay started to take shape. Back then, crypto was still recovering from the 2018 crash. Most people dismissed it as a playground for bros and gamblers. But I saw something else, a broken system waiting to be rebuilt. I wasn't interested in hype. I wanted access. I wanted security. I wanted a platform that could let someone like me, who couldn't even trust her parents with a graduation ride, trust a transaction. Secure Pay would do just that. I started coding nights and weekends. Jessica helped with the branding. We built a prototype that encrypted identity layers without sacrificing speed. I was up until 3 a.m. most nights tweaking back-end logic and running tests on public blockchains. The work was exhilarating and exhausting. We entered Harvard's annual startup competition the following semester. 100 teams, only one prize, $50,000 in seed money and office space. I told myself we didn't have a shot. But that didn't stop me from practicing my pitch 42 times in the mirror. The night before the finals, I barely slept. Jessica found me pacing in our apartment kitchen, muttering about security vectors and user onboarding. "Harper," she said gently, "you live this. You've already won." "You think?" "I know, and so will they." The next day, we walked into that auditorium with a slide deck, a scrappy MVP, and a heartbeat loud enough to echo off the walls. We won! Secure Pay took first place. When they handed me that oversized check and announced our startup as the most promising financial innovation, I felt something I hadn't felt since, maybe ever. Validation. Not because someone gave it to me, but because I earned it. Every sleepless night, every missed holiday, every moment I swallowed pride instead of asking for help. All of it led here. But this win, it wasn't the climax. It was just the beginning. Because what came next would test everything. Not just my business, but my loyalty, my limits, and the thin line between justice and revenge. The startup win changed everything and nothing. We had the check, the space, the momentum, but not the comfort. I was still a full-time student, still broke, and still waking up at 6 a.m. to work shifts before class. But now there was a fire under my feet. Secure Pay wasn't just a dream, it was real. And if I was going to turn it into something that could actually change the way people interacted with money, I couldn't afford to play it safe. I cashed the seed check, signed the incorporation papers, and spent the next month obsessively writing code, refining algorithms, and interviewing students smarter than me. We moved into a tiny room at the Harvard Innovation Lab, 3 desks, a whiteboard, and a mini fridge stocked with dollar store ramen and Red Bull. Jessica took over operations and branding. I brought on 2 part-time coders from the computer science department, both brilliant, both constantly sleep-deprived. We worked through spring break, through finals, through nights that bled into mornings. There were no parties, No networking cocktails. Just us. A flickering ceiling light. And a countdown clock on the wall. But just when I thought things were stabilizing, life threw another twist. Michael Chen. He was a name I'd heard whispered in every startup circle. An early investor in one of the major social media platforms. Sharp, ruthless, and almost mythic in the way he turned seed-stage ideas into IPOs. One day, I got a DM on LinkedIn. "Lunch, I've been watching Secure Pay. Let's talk." I stared at the message for 10 minutes, rereading it like it might disappear. Jessica saw my face and blinked. "Did someone die?" "Worse," I whispered. "Someone important just noticed us." We met at a rooftop restaurant in downtown Boston. He wore a slate gray suit and never checked his phone once. I pitched hard every security detail, every market weakness we solved. I showed him our prototype, our roadmap, our growth potential. He listened. And then, just as dessert hit the table, he said it. "I'll offer you $2 million, cash, right now. For the full concept, I'll build it. You can finish your degree without ever worrying about rent again." My breath caught. $2 million? More money than I'd ever imagined. Enough to wipe out every struggle, every late payment, every anxious night staring at an empty fridge. I could stop fighting. I could rest. But then, my eyes drifted to the leather bag by my feet. Inside it, my old, battered laptop. The one that held my first lines of code. The one I used in silence while others got handed shortcuts. That laptop was ugly, slow. One of the hinges didn't close right. But it was mine. Just like Secure Pay. "No," I said, voice quiet but firm. "Thank you, but I'm not selling." He leaned back, not offended, amused. "Most students would have taken that in a heartbeat." "I'm not most students." The next day, he called again. "New offer, $500,000 for 15%. This time, I said yes. That money meant we could hire full-time developers, upgrade our servers, move beyond prototypes and into a scalable product. It also meant Michael joined as an advisor. And as much as I resisted authority, I had to admit the man knew how to build. But success doesn't come clean. 3 months in, we hit a wall. A bug in our encryption protocol triggered cascading failures. Every transaction test failed. We were days from demoing for real investors, and our system was collapsing under its own weight. One of our coders panicked and quit. Another got mono and dropped out for the semester. Our account balance, almost zero. I didn't sleep for 4 days. Jessica found me passed out at my desk with cracker crumbs in my hair and error logs on my chest. When I woke up, she was microwaving coffee for the 5th time. "You need to ask for help. Who our coder just rage quit, and we can't afford another. Call Professor Wilson." I hesitated. I didn't want to look weak. But I did it anyway. I dialed, heart pounding, half hoping she wouldn't answer. She did. I told her everything. The bug, the deadline, the money, the fear. There was silence. And then, every founder hits this wall. Harper, every single one. The question is, are you going to climb it or turn around? Her voice was calm, certain. She didn't try to save me. She believed I could save myself. So I did. I rewrote half the system code over one weekend. Jessica took over our pitch deck and legal structure. We reached out to our network, found one grad student willing to work for equity and free burritos. We crawled out of that hole. And when the revised system finally passed our stress test, 30% faster and twice as secure, I sat in the middle of the floor and cried. Not from exhaustion, but from something deeper. I had almost let go of what I built, just because it got hard. I had almost folded the same way I had in high school, smiling through disappointment, pretending it didn't hurt. But not this time. Michael saw the new system and said one thing. "You're ready for Series A." He wasn't wrong. With his connections, We got meetings with some of the top venture firms in Boston and New York. Investors who normally ignored student-led startups were suddenly interested. Our numbers spoke for themselves. Our encryption had teeth. Our product filled a gap no one else had solved. And then, like some divine timing, Bitcoin surged back into mainstream headlines. Crypto was hot again. We were perfectly positioned. 1 month later, we closed a $50 million Series A round. Our valuation, $700 million. That night, I walked alone across the Charles River Bridge. It was cold, the kind that pinched your face and made you remember you're alive. I stopped halfway and looked out over the city Cambridge glowing behind me, Boston rising ahead. For a moment, I saw my parents' faces. Not their actual faces, just the memory of how they looked at Cassandra. How they never looked at me. But now, I didn't need them to. I was doing something bigger than all of us. 2 weeks later, we hit $1 billion valuation. And I still didn't tell them. Not because I was hiding, but because I wanted to choose when they found out. So I waited. Until graduation. Until I walked across that stage. In a cheap dress. With $1 billion company behind me. And a bus ticket in my bag. The morning of my graduation, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of birds outside the window and the rumble of a public bus 2 blocks away. I dressed slowly, no rush. I had planned this. No black car, no driver in a suit, just me, a garment bag, and my backpack slung over my shoulder with my laptop still inside. That same scratched-up machine I'd coded the first lines of Secure Pay on. The hinge squeaked a little when I zipped it shut, like it was saying goodbye. My robe hung crisply on the back of the door, and my shoes, black, worn but polished, waited beside it like soldiers. Jessica padded into the kitchen, still in her hoodie. "You sure you don't want us to pick you up?" I shook my head. "I'm taking the bus." "Harper, come on." I want to remember exactly how I got here. She didn't push. She just gave me a hug. A real one, the kind that doesn't ask questions. Then she held up a thermos. "Chamomile. It's calming. For your stomach. Also, Professor Wilson says don't forget to breathe." I walked 2 blocks through the crisp May morning, light jacket fluttering as I moved past blooming magnolias and sleepy joggers. I clutched my invitation envelope, the one I'd sent my parents 3 weeks earlier. I hadn't heard back. Not even a text. Part of me still hoped, but the rest numb. When the bus pulled up, it hissed low, like a sigh. I stepped on. Only 4 other passengers, a nurse, a construction worker, a woman humming quietly to herself. No gowns, no bouquets. Just regular people starting their day. I found a window seat near the back and slid in. As the bus pulled away, Harvard's skyline came into view. I pressed my palm to the cool glass, watching sunlight hit the dome of Widener Library like a halo. This is mine. I thought, all of it. Harvard Yard was a sea of white chairs, crimson banners, and proud families in polished shoes. Students hugged parents. Mothers cried. Fathers filmed everything. Little brothers held signs that said, "You did it." And I stood off to the side, straightening my robe in the reflection of a vending machine. I pulled the invitation envelope from my pocket and looked at it one last time. Then I put it away. Because they weren't coming. They had a shopping trip with Cassandra. Bentley keys, New York boutiques, celebration dinners. Meanwhile, I was here, alone, with my billion-dollar company quietly waiting in my pocket, and my speech, my moment, just a few hours away. Jessica and Professor Wilson found me near the steps of Memorial Church. Jessica grabbed both my hands. "Ready, as I'll ever be." Professor Wilson stepped forward, brushed invisible lint from my shoulder. "Today, Harper," she said softly, You get to let the world see who you've been all along. Her words sat in my chest like a stone and a flame. The processional started. Bagpipes, applause, flashing cameras. I walked down the aisle to my seat. Row 5, center, summa cum laude, class valedictorian. No one knew. Not yet. Dean Harrison opened the ceremony with warmth and gravitas. A few deans gave remarks. A Nobel laureate gave a brief, funny speech about failure and persistence. Then came the conferral of degrees. Harper Williams, Dean Harrison read aloud, graduating summa cum laude, with highest distinction in business administration. I stood, walked to center stage, shook his hand, but he didn't let go of the mic. And, he continued, we're honored to announce that Miss Williams has also been named by Forbes magazine as the youngest self-made female billionaire in this year's graduating class, for her work as the founder and CEO of Secure Pay, a company now revolutionizing global cryptocurrency transactions. The applause hit like thunder. But louder than that was the gasp. I turned my head slightly and saw them. My father, frozen halfway to his feet. Program slipped from his hand, pages scattered. My mother's mouth was open, one hand covered it. Cassandra, even her phone had dropped to her lap. They had come. Late. But they were here. And now the truth was too loud to ignore. I stepped up to the podium. The applause was still going, but I didn't wait for it to die. 4 years ago, I began, steady and clear. I stepped off a bus with 2 suitcases and a laptop that wouldn't stay shut. I didn't know where I fit in. I just knew I had something to prove. I worked 3 jobs, ate too many noodles, slept too little, and I built a company in the cracks of my schedule between lectures, late shifts, and quiet weekends. Secure Pay wasn't born from privilege. It was born from necessity, from frustration, from the belief that financial freedom should not depend on your last name, your zip code, or your inheritance. I let that hang. Success, I've learned, is not the applause. It's the hours no one sees, the rejections, the resilience, the refusal to be erased. I locked eyes deliberately with the 3rd row. Some people will only start paying attention when you make the front page. But if that's what it takes, then so be it. More applause. I smiled, but it wasn't performative. It was earned. I stepped off the stage, heart pounding, and returned to my seat. When the ceremony ended, caps flew into the air like promises. My classmates hugged and shouted and sprayed water bottles. And across the lawn, I saw them coming. My father walking with intention. My mother fixing her hair. Cassandra clutching her phone, but not scrolling it. They moved like a unit. Straight for me. Jessica stepped closer. Want me to block them? No, I whispered. Let's see what they came for. My father was the first to speak. Harper. His voice rang loud, for others to hear. Why didn't you tell us? I met his eyes. You never asked. His smile faltered. My mother leaned in for a hug, all staged poise. We're so proud of you, she said. A billionaire. At 22. Darling, you must tell us everything. Cassandra finally looked up. Wait, Secure Pay. That's your company. It is. That's actually really cool. Her voice was quieter, genuine, not sarcastic. I wasn't expecting that. Then my father cleared his throat again. We made dinner reservations. Let's go celebrate. Just us. Family. The word family landed oddly, like they were trying to claim something they hadn't earned. I glanced past them toward my team. Toward Jessica, Professor Wilson. Toward my people. Actually, I said calmly, I already have plans. My mother frowned. Surely you can reschedule. This is your family. I looked her in the eye. The people who supported me are my family. Her face froze. My dad bristled. And Cassandra. She did something no one expected. Can I come to your party instead? We all turned. She shrugged. I want to know what you built. I'm tired of pretending I don't care. I stared at her, and for the first time in years, I saw not the golden child, but just a girl who never got to be real. I smiled genuinely. Yeah, you're welcome to join us. My father's jaw clenched. Cassandra. No, she cut in. I want to. He opened his mouth to protest. But this time, no one listened. Because for once, he wasn't the loudest voice in the room. That evening, the rooftop of the Charles Hotel buzzed with quiet joy. String lights danced in the breeze. Glasses clinked. The skyline of Cambridge shimmered behind us like the end of a movie. But this wasn't the end. It was the first scene of a story I was finally writing on my own terms. Secure Pay's leadership team had pulled out all the stops catered dinner, live acoustic band, and a projector screen with rotating slides of our journey screenshots of old code, our cramped innovation lab office, even a grainy photo of me asleep at my laptop with crackers in my hand. Everyone laughed when it popped up. Even me. Jessica tapped her glass with a fork. All right, she grinned. Harper doesn't want a speech, but I'm making one. The room chuckled. She cleared her throat. There are few people in this world who fight for their future harder than Harper, and fewer who do it with zero shortcuts, no favors, no family name to lean on, just grit, code, and way too much caffeine. Light laughter again. She built this company not just for herself, but for everyone who's ever been told they weren't enough. And as her friend, her COO, and her chosen sister, I couldn't be prouder. I blinked hard, gripping my champagne glass a little too tightly. Applause followed, then hugs, then more drinks. And then Cassandra arrived. Wearing flats. No filters, no high-end bag. Just her and a nervous smile. I met her near the bar. You came, I said, more surprised than I let on. I told them I had a headache. Technically, not a lie. Dad wasn't thrilled. He never is. She smirked, but there was something else in her eyes, something softer. We walked over to the quieter side of the rooftop. I poured us both some lemonade and sat on a low bench under the lights. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Cassandra looked out over the city. You know, she said, I always thought you were perfect. I turned to her. What? Growing up, everything you did just worked. Perfect grades. Teachers loved you. You didn't cry when mom ignored you. I used to think you didn't need anything. I needed everything, I said, voice barely above a whisper. I know that now. She glanced down at her glass. Dad made UCLA sound like the only option. Said he'd only pay for it if I picked business. I hate business. Harper, I want to work with animals, maybe conservation or marine biology. I just never said it out loud. Why now? She shrugged. Because you did it without them. And you're not bitter. You're not angry. You're still standing. That took work, I admitted. And therapy. She laughed. I should probably start that too. We talked for over an hour. About high school. About mom's impossible standards. About the way dad only respected people who talked like stock reports. And then Cassandra asked something I didn't expect. Would you ever let me intern at the Secure Pay Foundation? I blinked. You're serious? Yeah, I know I've never earned it. But I want to start somewhere real, not just another shiny prize. I looked at her, and for the first time since we were kids, I didn't see her as the golden child. I saw her as someone trying to step off the pedestal they'd built around her. You can start Monday, I said. No shortcuts. No shortcuts, she repeated. And just like that, something healed. Later that night, after most guests had left, I stood alone near the railing. The city lights flickered beneath me. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. I didn't have to turn to know who it was. My father. He stepped beside me, holding a drink he hadn't touched. "You made quite the speech today." "Thanks. People are talking about your company, about you." I said nothing. He paused. "I should have come sooner." I turned to him slowly. "You didn't miss the ceremony, Dad. You missed the last 10 years. I didn't know it meant so much." "That's the problem." He swallowed hard. "I can help, with managing growth, with press. The business world is volatile. I have a board, a team. I'm good. But I'm your father. You told me to take the bus." Silence. "You didn't just skip graduation," I continued. "You skipped every concert, every award night, every moment I needed you there." He looked down. "You were the strong one." That wasn't a compliment. That was abandonment dressed as a virtue. He didn't respond. And I didn't wait. "You can be in my life, Dad, but not if you pretend nothing happened. Not if you think showing up now makes you a stakeholder in what I built." He nodded, slowly, then walked away. No big exit, no slammed doors. Just the sound of quiet footsteps. And it felt right. As the lights dimmed and the hotel staff began clearing the tables, I sat on a bench and pulled my laptop out of my bag. That same one. I opened it, and there, in the drafts folder, was a letter I had written 2 weeks ago. To my parents. Titled Things You Never Asked. I never sent it. But tonight, I deleted it. Not out of peace, but because I didn't need it anymore. The next morning, Cassandra slid a note under my bedroom door at the penthouse. It was a sticky note, torn at the edge. It read, "Thank you for letting me try the Harper way. I'm ready." Next to it was a pair of shiny car keys. Bentley logo, untouched. And below it, a post-it she'd added. "Tell that girl in Arizona, she doesn't need to take the bus. We'll send a car." I stared at it, stunned. Because she got it. She really got it. And in that moment, I knew something had changed. Not just in her, but in us. A month later, I was back in the same high school auditorium where I'd once waited alone on graduation day. Same creaky stage, same outdated lighting, same frayed red curtain that never fully closed. But this time, I wasn't in the audience. I was the keynote speaker. "Please welcome our distinguished alumna," the principal's voice echoed over the mic, CEO of Secure Pay and founder of the Secure Pay Foundation, Harper Doyle. Applause. Whistles. Someone shouted, "That's my sister, definitely Cassandra." I walked to the podium slowly, steady, letting the moment wash over me. The weight of what this room used to represent abandonment, shame, being invisible had lifted. I took a breath. Then I spoke. When I graduated from here, I didn't have a car, a party, or even a ride home. My name wasn't printed in the program, and nobody stood up when I crossed the stage, but I crossed it anyway. The room went silent. Because some of us aren't handed the dream. We have to build it, brick by brick, line by line, failure after failure. I saw a girl in the front row wipe a tear. A boy in the back was filming, nodding to himself. And that laptop I wrote my first code on. It was borrowed. The hoodie I wore to my first investor pitch, thrifted. And the only reason I survived that first year was because one professor at MIT told me I didn't need a family name to belong in the room. A pause. The silence was no longer heavy, it was charged, empowered. So if you're sitting here today thinking you're behind, forgotten, not good enough, let me say it clearly. You are not a statistic. You are not your bank account. You are not what your parents failed to give you. You are your choices. Thunderous applause broke out. I almost couldn't finish the speech. Afterward, Dozens of students came up, some with stories, some just for a hug. One girl gave me a crumpled napkin with her email written on it, asking how to start coding without a laptop. I gave her mine. Yes, the one. The one with the cracked corner and worn-off keyboard labels. It felt right. Back in my car, I sat in the quiet. On the passenger seat was a small envelope with my name. Cassandra's handwriting. Inside a single photo. It was from years ago, me at age 14, helping her rehearse for a piano recital. I'd forgotten the moment entirely. But in the photo, my face was pure focus, and hers was full of trust. On the back, she had written, "I thought you were just helping me play the right notes. Now I see you were teaching me to listen." 2 weeks later, we launched the Secure Pay Fellowship, a full scholarship for first-generation tech students, with guaranteed internships, mentorship, and housing support. Our first recipient, a girl from Tucson, first in her family to go to college, wanted to work in ethical cybersecurity. The same girl who once DM'd me on LinkedIn with a question about Python loops. She cried when we told her. I cried too. Now, I sit on the balcony of my Cambridge apartment, same building, but top floor now. The Bentley keys still sit in a drawer. I bike to work. There's a photo above my desk, now me, Cassandra, and Jessica at the rooftop party, arms around each other, faces messy from laughter and wine. Right next to it, a shadow box with my thrifted graduation dress, and a sticky note framed beneath it. The Harper way. I don't hate my parents anymore. I don't forgive them either. But I've stopped waiting for them to be something they're not. Sometimes, healing isn't about fixing what broke. It's about building something stronger around the break. Like Japanese kintsugi, the gold isn't a cover-up. It's the story. People ask me why I didn't take the $2 million. Here's why. Because what I built without it is priceless. Because choosing myself wasn't revenge. It was liberation. And because one day, when someone else stands alone on a graduation stage, they won't have to walk off alone. They'll walk into our arms. So if you're still watching, and you've ever felt invisible, replaceable, underestimated, know this: you don't have to earn your worth through suffering. But if suffering is all they've given you, you can turn it into something they can't take back. That's what I did. That's the Harper way. What would you say to the people who counted you out? Drop your story in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe every kid deserves a shot, regardless of the zip code on their birth certificate. And remember, you are not behind. You are building.